I think it's a great time for us to be talking now that it's the beginning of the year. More people are out there beginning their fitness journey. And in addition, there's also more information coming out about regarding health and COVID. And I'm curious to know what your opinion is on New Year's resolutions. I think everyone can either relate to having one or maybe not even setting them. And me myself have maybe not done them in the past few years just because of my opinion on them. But I'm curious to know what your opinion on New Year's resolutions are.
That's great. You know, it's funny. I just came upon some colleagues in the industry talking just about that. And I was amazed at how many trainers in the world, and coaches for that matter, slam and kind of put a negative connotation on New Year's resolutions. When really, what is it? It's somebody that's trying to create an intention of changing their life. So why do we want to stomp on such a thing? I think New Year's resolutions can be wonderful. I think any resolution to change can be a remarkable way of somebody improving their life. Now, how we go about attaining those goals, well, for many people, they just put it out there and they hope for the best. But with anything that we really want to change, there needs to be some kind of plan or mapping out. So I think, honestly, I think New Year's resolutions are wonderful. Personally, I make resolutions throughout the year, and there isn't one time a year where I do that, but I do like the idea that, you know, we can inspire change in people. And if that involves January 1, then great. Do you need help attaining those? And that's what we're here for.
Right. And I feel like for humans, one of the biggest ways and one of the best ways for people to change is something happening to them, whether emotionally or physically or even mentally, or even something as arbitrary as like just a New Year's resolution is like, this is my opportunity where I'm going to go out there, I'm going to get fit, and I'm going to change the way that I've been doing things from here on out. But again, I think where a lot of people, maybe even trainers, PTs, and vice versa, kind of get a bad rep in thinking about New Year's Eve is perhaps that it's, you know, it's a facade where people are like, yes, I'm going to change, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then nothing ever happens. And so I suppose, what are some of the actual steps that you think are important for people to enact in order for them to stick to their New Year's goals?
Well, I think we have to choose things that are attainable. In fact, one of the things that we do in our facility is try to create long-lasting lifestyle changes. So we essentially have a list of about 26 items on a piece of paper, and they could be as simple as having a glass of water with your meal, making sure that you chew your food 20 bites per mouthful, that you read something for just 5 minutes every day. These small little steps. And what we do with people is we say, okay, I want you to go through this list of 26 items, and I want you to cross off all the ones that are already your daily habitual routine. And I'll give you a high five for every one of those. And the remainder on that list, I want you to choose something there that you are 95 to 100% confident that you can attain it. And it may be as simple as making your bed in the morning. Can you do that? You know you're going to do that every morning when you wake up. You're going to turn that into a habit. That's phenomenal, because that's going to breed success. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll build up the confidence to take on a little bit bigger task. And then from there, that's going to build up even more confidence, and the tasks become bigger and bigger. And those bigger tasks may take smaller steps to achieve, but you are on this really nice pattern of success. And so I think that's a big thing, is getting those that are attainable, that have a high confidence level. And for those lofty resolutions, say there is a certain amount of weight you want to lose, or you want to save up enough money to go scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef or something. Well, that's just not going to happen overnight. So can we lay out a strategy, a plan, a map for small little things to achieve? And if you want to put some type of reward system along the way, then maybe that will help you, but it's not necessary. But can you get these small steps to get you to the end goal? And my wife, she likes the saying that if you're going to eat an elephant, you do it one bite at a time, right? So it's the same thing with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and I think it's hilarious how as humans, we have to almost play mind tricks on ourselves in order for us to do things. We have to like dangle things here. We have to be like, nope, you have to do the easy things first before we do the hard thing. We almost have to give ourselves permission, subconsciously or consciously, to say like, okay, you did this, here you go. Like, let's build a little bit of momentum and go forward and go forward. And one thing you had also had mentioned is like big goals. And do you think it's important to set big goals, like unattainable goals out, maybe not unattainable, but just goals that are, um, take a little bit more time? Or do you think it's more important to set little short-term goals, maybe like quarter goals that will be allow you to build up steam, build momentum? Or is it a combination of both? Because again, you had said like these sometimes you see people who are like, I want to lose like 20 pounds, or I want to lose 40 pounds or 50 pounds. And it's like, well, a healthy goal is to lose maybe like a pound a week, and or a pound or two a week, and that's something that we want to maintain and not lose weight too fast. And so you want to make sure that you're setting goals appropriately. And so thinking about long-term goals, you think it's more appropriate to set like very realistic goals, or goals that are like a little bit out of reach, so that way you're motivated to work hard to get towards them?
I think having small goals is something that will breed success, but I wholeheartedly believe that we should go big. We should think beyond. Like, what are your big, lofty goals? And there's this acronym called BHAG in the business world, which is big, hairy, audacious goals. And it's good. Or you could call it a bucket list if you want. What are the things you want to do before you die? What are the sights you want to see? All those things bring an awareness and intention into your conscious. And if you have those there, then you are going to be aware that the little things that it takes to get me there, I'm not going to overlook. I'm going to have a level of awareness that is going to hopefully get me in that direction. What happens in the brain is, of course, there was that documentary probably about 20 years ago called The Secret that maps out essentially what happens in your brain when you have an intention and how that trickles down into a whole bunch of things. But the same can be true when you negate certain things, when you say, I can't do that, or I want to do that, but, and you start putting buts in the way of your success. And we see it all the time, like in the physical world, and I'm sure you get this too, and this is not a slam on the medical profession, but there are so many doctors that will send out blanket statements to their patients that you should never do this. And with that new hip, you should never do that. Oh, we just put those new knees in. I don't want you ever to do this. And in essence, they're creating a world, a reality for their patients. And who's to say that they cannot achieve those things? That is a blanket statement based on a tool that was put in their body, but it's not based on the individual themselves. So I know that doctors will say such contraindications for joint replacements here and there because it's safety that they're looking after. But everybody's going to be different. Everyone's going to have different goals, different ambitions. And the last thing I want to do with somebody is tell them you can't. That's the only four-letter word not allowed to be spoken in my training facility. You can use all the other four-letter words you want at any point in time, but you are not allowed to say that CANT, because that's a dream killer. We're here to make dreams.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see it with a lot of post-op patients, like you had alluded to, a particular person that I'm thinking of in mind, and he listens to this, so I'm sure he'll hear this. But he had a shoulder replacement, and his orthopedic doctor told him he won't be able to press overhead like anything over 5 pounds. And we're working towards that goal, and we're very close to that goal. And it's just funny that, again, when he had got done with the surgery, the physician again had told him that you're probably not going to be able to do that. And it's like, well, he put in the work beforehand, before the surgery. We did a lot of strengthening and conditioning. And after the fact, we've been doing the same thing. And now he's doing the things that he wants to do. And we're getting close to doing that, and even close to doing a push-up, which after a shoulder replacement is like ridiculous, right?
That's remarkable.
So it's fun. And, you see this difference between, you're talking about like goals and saying I can't. And one thing that you've done is worked with a vast array of people from, beginners to professional athletes and so on. And I guess, is that the biggest difference that you see, is that the pro athletes or the people who are consistent are the ones that they don't say can't and they set these big goals? Or is it something else? Is there something else you're seeing?
Really good. Well, with professional athletes, that is their career. And
Hmm.
so they are the most compliant client because this is their livelihood. So they're going to follow instructions to the T. Some of those have been riddled with chronic injuries and impairments. And so they're a bit gun shy at times. And there needs to be more trust that is built up. But ultimately, yeah, I guess general population, average Joe client, average Mary, and so on, they are not the professional athletes. They are professionals in other fields. And the movements that they're coming in here are, for the most part, helping to take away chronic or acute pain or get them to take themselves out of the prison cell that their bodies have unavoidably been locked into and that they've taken away their freedom. I really want to get on the floor and play with my grandchildren. Oh, I've been skiing. I haven't skied for 10 years and I would really like to get back into it, or things like that, right? We create new realities, and we're personal guides, not personal trainers, because the body can heal itself if it's guided in the proper direction. And with the professional athletes, there's some that come in post rehab, others that are coming in off season or getting ready for preseason. The athletes, their goals are well established, and the general population, they just have different goals. But I think it's the same, especially if you can say, we're doing this because it's going to get you closer to your goal. We're getting you down on the ground and getting back up again, and you can use as much help as you need. But eventually, we're going to take that help away so that when your grandchildren come and visit, you're already going to be on the floor with the game board out, ready to play with them. And you won't even be thinking about, how am I going to do this?
Hmm.
And for that grandmother or grandfather, that's like making it to the Olympics in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you're also creating a game plan in your mind, and you're giving them these steps of like, listen, you're not the goal that you want to get to. We need to break it down and we need to figure out how we need to get there. And I think that's what makes a bad, not a bad, but a normal personal trainer or a coach to a great personal trainer and coach is like breaking down the plan and breaking down the course of where you need to go. So that way people can see it. Because if you can outline a path and be like, hey, we're going to go through the jungle, we're going to go up a hill, we're going to go over a river, and then we're going to be at our destination. It establishes, I don't even want to say establish, but people tend to trust you more. And with trust, it allows you to bring you through this difficult point of, one, exercise, and two, just again, a change in their life, something that they've been wanting to do and haven't been doing in a long time.
Yeah, and I think that it's complicated when you really look at all the elements, but I think the better trainers, the better coaches are the ones that take something complicated and can really simplify it so
Yeah.
that it's palatable and digestible. And for instance, I'll give you an example. When we think of exercise progression or exercise regression, and for the listening audience, that just means, how do I increase the intensity or decrease the intensity for a desired movement, say in the gym setting or rehab setting? And for us, we have 3 levels of progression. The first is assisted. Let's just take a simple squat, somebody getting up out of a chair, which is a very common movement that everyone should do for anybody that ever goes to the restroom, right? That is a common daily activity. So some people are going to require help and they won't be able to manage that properly with their own body weight. So we're going to give them help in the form of like holding on to a handrail or holding on to some straps or something, taking a little bit of weight off by giving them some rubber bands or whatever the case is going to be. That is the first level of progression. And then as they get more proficient, more strong, more flexible, whatever the case may be, better balance, and they can start to use less and less assistance, then I'm going to progress them on to see if they can do it unassisted. And that's the second level of intensity. Can you own your own body in the movement that we're desiring you to execute? And then they build up strength with that. And now they've become quite proficient in standing up on their own without any help. Well, now you have reached the level of ability where we can start to load external resistance or weight onto you so that we can get you even stronger. And so that is the third tier of progression, which is resisted. So we go from assisted to unassisted to resisted. And the trouble is, Michael, I think too many programs actually get people to go right to the top tier too soon. And we need to know that they can move specific ways before we start throwing weights on top of their body.
And I think that's where the real art comes in with personal training, but also rehab, strength and conditioning. I mean, anything, right? Like that middle ground between trying to figure out like how am I going to get my patient, my client, my whoever from point A to point B is going to be completely different depending on who you're going to be talking to. And the exercise regression progression is like exactly how you describe, is just figuring out how to get them from here to there. And again, with the squat and I agree. I think people go right for the weights. People always go right for the weights. And I can't tell you how many people who I've had and worked out, and I haven't given them a single band. I mean, maybe a band a little bit, and I haven't given them a single weight in their hand, and they're sweating bullets because we're doing the exercises either like correctly, or we're following a certain format where we're doing a little bit more like a superset or something a little bit different. And they're like, we didn't even hold any weights today. I'm like, yeah, I know, you don't need them.
Yeah. And with that, you've most likely found the dark zones, the areas that they don't travel often into, and the brain is not accustomed to moving, and therefore the muscles are not accustomed to the actual action, and they may not have the coordination and strength to accommodate it. So that in itself is going to be quite challenging. There's also the fact that you're not focusing on the biggest, strongest links in the chain, but you're looking for the weak links, because that will get the whole chain stronger. And I think as an industry, whether it's rehab or fitness and conditioning, is that it's so often programs are designed with focusing on the biggest links and the strongest links. And unfortunately, that's where injury will come into play, non-contact injury. We go through repetitive stress on the body, and syndromes begin to appear in the form of tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, rotator cuff problems, lower back, patellar tendonitis, all those. You could list a whole bunch, I'm sure, that you get to. And it's because, well, a lot of it has to do with the programming or lack thereof.
Yeah. And for people who may not in the space, me and Rocky are kind of going down a rabbit hole of nerding out on the whole exercise progression thing. But in general, I believe the best thing you can get out of this is an exercise program doesn't need to be complicated. It can be really simple. You don't necessarily always need weights. All you really need is your body, somebody to either show you, or you can look online for exercise prescription videos, and you can really get a great workout and improve over time, as long as you're trying to improve on the things, again, weak chains or little things that you need to improve upon, whether it's your leg strength, whether it's upper body strength, or whatever goal that you're trying to achieve. It doesn't need to be complicated. And how have you become? I've been fascinated with this idea of somebody who exercises. I am a person who just exercises. It's not even something that I think about. I go to the gym, I come home, and it's all, I mean, I don't think about like, oh, I have to go to the gym after this, or I have to go get this workout. And it's like, I'm going to the gym today. And I guess, how have you become a person who just works out?
Well, there was a time where I did not appreciate gyms. And I thought that was the most boring thing in the world, when you had the outdoors to fully enjoy. But then a friend of mine in my late teenage years took me after work and took me to a gym. We started moving and lifting weights in the typical fashion back of the 80s. And I really liked the effects it was having on my body. And And I'm lazy at heart, I guess you'd say. If you look at my website, you'd probably say, "What are you kidding me? Really? You're doing all this?" But in my head, I'm a lazy guy, and I like to procrastinate. So when it came time in college years to study for exams, you'd most likely find me in the gym working out, because it was so much easier to go to the gym and work out than it was to study for exams. Somehow I made it through school, but my life in the gym continued on, and it became just a habit. But I got to tell you, I burned out. I was working with too much intensity, and I was starting to go for like bodybuilding competitions, and the things that you have to do for your body right there, and the intensity level really sent me on a downward spiral, to the point where I didn't want to be in the gym anymore. And it took several years to get back into it. And nowadays, I use the gym merely as a way to work on missing components in my body, because I realize that honestly, the gym is there as a supplement, and it's supplementing purposeful movement that we should be attaining on a daily basis. We didn't have gymnasiums back in the 1700s or early 1800s. But as the Industrial Revolution progressed on more and more, and technology advanced and took away work from the human form, and we went from farms to cities to assembly lines to office cubicles, the human body moved less and less. And now we've got cell phones, and we're sitting here for an hour or whatever, talking in front of a screen. And that's what we do in 2 years of pandemic, is that we've moved less and less. So somewhere along the way, somebody said, well, we've got to offset that by moving more and more. And they started throwing these things into a room in the form of dumbbells and barbells and cable machines. And then it got all fancy through the 80s and 90s with vinyl seated machines where I could lift my leg up and down as if I'm on an exercise lazy boy, right? You look at the history of it, you're like, so now you go, well, would it be okay if I went for a walk? Like, I actually have clients. What do you think about me swimming? I think that's great. I
Yeah.
don't want you in the gym every day. I want you going out and living life. I want you going for a hike in the forest. I want you going surfing, because I'm in a coastal town in California. I want you going out and going for a bike ride. Go out and go ballroom dancing, go line dancing. I don't care. Just get out and explore the beautiful gift that you've been giving in this human form. And you don't have to go into a gym and do mechanized movements like some robot and expect the world is going to open up to you. It's fun for some people. And for those that are listening that don't want to go to a gym, this trainer is saying that's okay. But don't sit on your backside and expect everything to come to you. Find something that you're passionate about. If you're a bird watcher, make some plans and go out to the estuary or up into the hills or out to the desert. Make trips where you're going hiking. If you just want to be with the grandkids, then start to have field trips and get out there and move, instead of always sitting around the dining room table. That's really it. It's an exploration of movement. And now the gym for me is my place of work. And there'll be times where I need to explore some movements in my own body. And that's what the gym is there for me.
Yeah. And it's even worth noting to do other modes of exercise too. Don't just get into a gym. Don't just run, making sure that you're trying many different modes of exercise too, because one, it has great benefits to be doing cardiovascular and strengthening exercise, but two, it has great neuro effects, and that there's changes to your brain matter that if you do new things and you do different movements, those parts of your brain are now being stimulated. And that's how you stay young. That's how you stay healthy. And that's how you keep your body sound. And I think you make an interesting point in that people always put these walls up of like, well, I got to try this new thing, or I got to go to this one spin class. And they put all their chips, or at least all of this thought into like, this needs to be the solution to my exercise. And it's like, it might not be for you, and you have to keep trying many different modes in order for you to get into the habit of actually exercising and making it a part of who you are as an individual.
Completely agree. There is that old part of your brain, before humans became conscious and developed the motor cortex, frontal lobe, and front part of your brain, there's that just above the brainstem, this area called the cerebellum. And the cerebellum loves novel movements. It loves change and novelty. And that cerebellum is also responsible for accuracy, for balance, for coordination. And the brainstem's responsible for posture. And it also is responsible for pain inhibition. So if you have some chronic issues and pain, getting some different types of movement will stimulate the cerebellum, which will help inhibit pain receptors, and you won't feel as much potentially. It's just remarkable. So yeah, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, that's insanity, right? So if we can't just explore different things. And for instance, if you do love going to the gym, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not downplaying that at all. But if you're doing the same routine over and over, and you've been doing it for several weeks, months, heck, years, you really need to think about changing it up. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. It could be, today I'm going to safely walk backwards on the treadmill instead of walk forwards. I might start doing one arm exercises instead of doing both arms at the same time. I might take a spin class, even though it doesn't sound that appealing to me. I'll check it out.
And that's a great time for you to get a coach too, or a personal trainer. And I've even in the past 2 years, I have gotten bored with some of the programming that I do for myself. And I decided to reach out to somebody else to help me with some of my exercise programming. And it's been a huge game changer in thinking of like exercises that I would have never thought about doing, or just programming in a way that was completely different or foreign to me. So it's been super successful. But perhaps somebody who's maybe exercising for a while and they're getting bored of the same thing, and that might be an indicator to you to be either one, get a trainer, or two, just try something completely different.
Yeah, people that cook food for someone else, that food's tastier than if they cooked it for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
It's same with programming. Exactly.
So for people who may be exercising already and they've established a good exercise program, maybe they've tinkered with the gym, or maybe they just started running, I guess, are there pillars that you think of that are like crucial that you need to be doing exercise wise? I always say some form of strength training, some kind of cardio, and some form of way of keeping your brain sharp. And whether it be meditation or something along those lines, I suppose, what kind of things do you look for, at least in a complete exercise program, for maybe people who are still in the exercise realm and are trying to make sure they're having a whole encompassing exercise program?
Well, those are a really great starting point for sure. When it comes to, say, resistance training or strength training, there are pillars within that category, and they are the pillars of human movement. Meaning there's basically 5 of them. Can I exert force away from my body with my arms? So that might be any type of pressing motion. And it could be something where I'm pressing overhead or in front of me or downward. So examples would be maybe an overhead press, like a shoulder press. But I could also do a handstand, and that's pressing me when I'm upside down, but I'm still pressing overhead. Bench press or push-up would be kind of a horizontal press. And then maybe doing dips like you would find a gymnast doing on parallel bars. That would be a vertical press downward. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can press. And then can I exert force toward my body in the form of pulling? So rowing or pull downs or some type of action where I'm drawing the arms toward my body. Do I want to do it one arm, both arms alternating? And so on. There's many variations to that. And what angle do I want to go in? And then going up and down, like changing the level or elevation of my head. And we call that level changes. And forms of that could be like a squat that we spoke of earlier, lunges, stepping up on an object and coming back down. And also the exercise known as deadlift, where you hinge at the hip, lower down, lift a weight up off the ground and place it back down again. So those are the key components of level change. So pressing and pulling and level change. The other 2 are rotation. Most of the muscles in our body are attaching in a somewhat diagonal fashion. So when they contract, they cause rotation. And it's also how we walk primarily. One leg swinging forward, swinging the hips, while the opposite arm swings forward and swings the rib cage. And so that rotation is really essential. And can I rotate properly in the directions that I need to? And lastly, locomotion. Can I move through space? So with your resistance training, are you a tree and you're just standing there? Or are you moving with resistance? So those would be great elements to include. I love meditation. I think that is just stilling the body. And with that, you can focus on breath work, breathing in and out through the nostrils. And we're finding more and more about that. Yoga professionals have been knowing that for the last 5 to 10,000 years, the importance of breathing. But in the athletic world of strength and conditioning, they're really starting to harness in on the essential breathing patterns for optimal performance. And those would be great. And of course, nutrition comes in key with that. I know that there's a lot of people looking to lose weight, and so they head to the gym. But I would head to a nutritionist. I would head to a dietary coach, because 80% of weight loss is going to come from what you put into your body, not how you move your body. And that's coming from a personal trainer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The diet is so crucial. And you started discussing all these exercises, and we also discussed the idea of regressing and progressing exercise. For other trainers or other providers who may be lost when it comes to prescribing exercises and so forth, I suppose, how did you build your ability to prescribe exercise? And maybe this will be helpful for people who have their own exercise program. They're trying to build their own program. They're trying to figure out, okay, like, where do I put this here? Where do I put there? And I suppose, is it just playing around with the exercises and trying it out? How did you become good at prescribing, exercising, and putting it all together into a plan?
Really, with one word. And somebody approached me many, many years ago and said, this is what you have to do. You simply have to ask why. And that one word has been my compass throughout this entire process of trying to develop better and better programs for the people that see me. And why am I giving them this particular movement? And there better be a valid reason behind it. It's not just because I saw it in some magazine or YouTube video and I thought it would be kind of fun, like it's some stupid human trick. Can they do this, right? No. And this is I love history, Michael. I really love understanding how we got to where we are, and whether that's in politics or fitness or whatever. But when it comes to exercise programs, and where did we get the exercises that we're choosing to begin with? We just take for granted that these are what we should be doing, and we haven't really bothered to ask why or where did they come from? And the answer is most gym exercises came from 3 competitions. The first competition would be bodybuilding. And the purpose of those exercises were to build aesthetically pleasing musculature of the body so that they could stand on stage in a Speedo with oil and tanning solution. It had nothing to do with the proper movement of my body and how it functions, nor anything inside my body and how it functions. There are carryovers, obviously, as I get stronger and so on. I got better metabolism, blood flow, and it's cardiovascular and all that. Yes, that's true. But those exercises over time will wear down specific areas because you're creating force in one place and you're only training this area and not getting the body to understand how it's meant to cooperate with the rest of the body. It's all about isolation and not integration. And then we have powerlifting, which in the old days used to be called odd lifting, but it boiled down eventually into 3 primary competitive lifts, and that's bench press, laying on the ground and lifting something heavy off your body, which I don't know how many people do throughout the day. Maybe a football player that's been tackled and is under the huddle, maybe that under the pile. But then there's squats. Yes, people do squat like we talked about every day, but not with hundreds of pounds on a barbell on their shoulders. I don't know of anybody that really needs to do that, even the UPS drivers, right? And then we've got the deadlift, which granted, I think these are all valid lifts. But is that the basis? Is that where you want to have the fundamental foundation of your programming on aesthetics or gross force production of these kind of, I won't say unnatural movements because we can naturally do those, but they're not things that are found every day. So this led me down the hole of going, why am I doing what I'm doing and where are these exercises coming from? And not to geek too far out, but I found that it was pulling people out of their posture, out of their balanced place. The more somebody did bench press, the more the muscles in the front of their chest and shoulders began to draw the arms forward. And that would cause the lower back muscles to have to pull more to keep the forward motion from going any more forward, and they wouldn't fall on their nose. or doing deadlifts, that would start to create more muscle development in certain muscles that would start pulling their skeletal frame in this direction. And before you know it, the more we get out of alignment, the more things start to compensate, the more ways in which we start to have to move that develop more inflammation in one area or imbalances in another. And the next thing you know, somebody's ankle's bothering them or their neck or their shoulder. And we don't date it back or trace it back to their actual programming. So I started looking at, okay, how do we use strength training to not pull the body out of alignment, but to bring it back in, just like yoga class might do, or martial arts have been doing, or Tai Chi. All these Eastern philosophies have been doing this for so long, but the Great West here is just all about getting up to the red line. No matter if you're in a Yugo, we're going to put the Formula One race car engine in under the hood, and we're going to get that thing redlining around the track. And yeah, the chassis can't handle it, but that's okay. We got more parts and the doctors can put them in as we need to, right? I know it sounds silly and all, but that's what's been going on. So I looked at how does somebody stand and what's going on with their body. And then if I know where their body is in space, that's going to tell me what the muscles are kind of doing and where the joints are. And that's going to be my map. And on top of that, how does that body actually take a step and move through space? Because humans have been walking for 2 million years. And we have developed the most efficient gait pattern, a pattern of movement through every joint in the body through three-dimensional space. And an entire gait cycle lasts for less than a second. But all those joints have to go through their ranges of motion in both ends of the spectrum. And so we have this information at our fingertips between resting posture and how a body moves through space. Can't we use that as our guide to developing strength routines? I don't know if I really answered your question, but I think it's important that we bring it up, that we have to step back and just don't assume that this is how things must be done, but we have to question authority, because the fitness industry is telling us one thing, and I'm kind of shaking my head going, there's got to be a better way. Maybe there's an alternative way that we can look at this where we're not going to have such orthopedic concerns. Because do you know there's more physical therapists in the world than there ever has been in the history of man?
I believe it. More and more people are definitely graduating.
Orthopedic surgeons and chiropractors. I mean, but really, physical therapy came about in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. And Shirley Sarman and all those people, and then it started to develop more and more. So it's a very young science, and it's just interesting to see, why did it come about? Well, it's because people were moving less. And then when they tried to supplement it, they were choosing exercises or movements that weren't actually restoring proper function to the body, but they were getting stronger. They were looking good in their bikini. So it must be good.
Right. Yeah. And it goes back to that why question. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you going in the gym and you're picking up these dumbbells and you're pressing them over your head, when in reality, you probably don't need to be picking up that much weight. You like maintaining overhead function is definitely important, but before you go out and start picking exercises and picking the most flashy exercise you see on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you find your exercises, figure out your why of why are you exercising? Are you trying to get back to like getting on the ground to play with your grandkids? Are you getting into fitness for the first time and you're just trying to figure out, like, just trying to get a good baseline of strength? Regardless of what your why is, you got to be asking that question consistently and making sure that they are completely aligned to where you want to end up. Because otherwise you're going to be doing these exercises like you're alluding to. You're going to be doing the bench press, the deadlift, the squat, the whatever. And you're going to, in 20 years, you're going to end up in one of these positions where if for those people just listening, my shoulders are forward and my arms are forward, and I'm flexing my biceps. You have to make sure that whatever exercise you're doing, you're going to be okay with where you end up.
Yeah. And don't beat yourself up that you've been doing the same thing over and over, because you've developed an unconscious habit, or better yet, a pattern. Mm-hmm. And we need to disrupt patterns. That's what we actually do in my facility. If we're going to create change, I need to change the patterns of movement, the patterns of behavior, a whole bunch of patterns. Like, for instance, what hand do you brush your teeth with?
I'm pretty sure it's my right hand, but I'm
right hand.
I'm not 100% sure though.
But when you do go to brush your teeth, you're going to reach for the brush with the same hand. You're going to put the toothpaste on with the opposite hand, and you're naturally just going to start brushing. And in the brushing itself, you have a pattern. But the thing is that we are not necessarily aware. And it's only when we bring awareness to ourselves and to our actions and these patterns can we recognize, one, that a pattern exists, and then create a willingness to change that pattern. And so I often, just for giggles in a way, encourage my clients to try and brush their teeth with their opposite hand. Mm-hmm. And it's very awkward at first. It's like trying to write your name with your opposite hands. Well, the same holds true for your strength training routine or your gym routine. You have a pattern and you have certain things that you do really well. So you want to keep on doing those because you're very good at it. And the hard thing is to look at where the areas that you're are not as proficient. Maybe you're not as strong. Maybe you're not as coordinated, but you could be if you spend a little time doing that. The trouble is, those are going to be the things like your patients that you saw, and maybe you used a band or you didn't use a band, and you developed a new pattern for them, and they are sweating bullets, and they're going, I can't believe this is so hard. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because you've disrupted the pattern.
Yeah, and challenge them in a new way that they need to be challenged. And are these pillars and your why? I mean, you speak so forcefully about this topic, and is this your why behind your book with Return to Center? Does all the ideas that we're talking about, are they encompassed within the book that you wrote, and the reason why you became an author?
Yes. Yeah. I wrote a few other books early on that were in adventure sports conditioning. And essentially, just like many other books that try to be specific to one sport, you just take your average gym exercises that look kind of like the action in that sport, and you throw them on pages, and then you put a cover on it and blah, blah, blah. But this one here, Return to Center, is the accumulation of 30 years of being a strength conditioning specialist and the mentors I've had over the years that have taught me about posture realignment, about gait analysis, about chain reaction and integrative movement, have really been the catalyst for unlearning the biases that I had with strength and conditioning and I won't say old world, but the conventional way of looking at how the body moves, biomechanics and anatomy, as well as strength conditioning exercises. And yeah, it's pretty much all through the book. And I had a colleague of mine who came out with a book not too long before mine came out, and she had this wonderful idea of embedding little QR codes on the pages of her book, and she put a few videos that people could scan the QR code with their phone, with their camera on their phone, and a little video would pop up. So I thought, that's brilliant. I'm going to do the same thing. So this is going to be more like a pocket trainer where people can dive as deep or as shallow as they want. Every movement has a QR code, every concept, every explanation. You can have video explanation and video demonstration. And then the concepts of where we came from, how we got started with this, and where we've ended up in the world today with conventional strength and conditioning and the effects it has on the body is also in there. And there's little vignettes in between each chapter that relay, I won't say a case study because that's really research-based, but a story about a client that I worked with and how they came in to see me for a shoulder injury. And as we traced it back, we realized, well, that shoulder is behaving the way it is because it's trying to work with the rib cage that's in a position that it finds itself in because it's balancing on hips. And those hips are shifted because 10 years ago, they had sprained their ankle and they had developed a new pattern of moving to get off that ankle. And although the pain and swelling had subsided years ago, the pattern remained to the point where that shoulder was being asked to do more work because the position it was in. And so looking at the body, taking a history of everyone's experience in their life and realizing that their body is a container or a culmination of all the experiences that we have. And every day is going to be different. So programs need to change to accommodate that.
Yeah, and certainly having multiple modes to interact is also really important. And, you tell this story, and I think also people are really good at, I mean, the way people learn rather is through storytelling. And an additional part of your story and things you've done over the past 30 years is also being a gym owner and also being a coach. And I guess what are some things that you've learned that perhaps you didn't expect to learn being a gym owner and being a coach at the same time?
Running a small business is incredibly hard, and through a pandemic, it's 10 times harder.
Mm.
And there's no awards given out for surviving. It's just that you do what you need to do and you can persevere. And there isn't anything put in front of you that you cannot overcome, whether it's with the help of others or on your own. There is nothing that has been thrown at us that we cannot adapt around. Some things you'll try and you'll fail, and other things you'll try and succeed. And your clients will basically guide you as well as you guide them. So often we'll find that we have a number of certain types of athletes that come in because that's just the direction that we're going. And then we suddenly have a different classification of clients that come in, and we just go with the people that come in, because most of them have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a spine. And they pretty much move in similar ways. We just want them to move better. But yeah, being a coach for trainers, and for that matter, physical therapists, or anybody working with individuals or groups that are looking to encourage positive change, I recommend spending equal amount of time that you do with your continuing education in your industry with an equal amount of time in psychology and philosophy and coaching aspects like life coaches and so on, because the mind-body connection is something that does not disintegrate, and it cannot be disconnected. And if we're working the body, we're going to be working with the person and their mind, their psychosocial, emotional aspects as well. And if all I'm learning is all about the human form and not about the psychological aspect of the person that's coming in, then it's an incomplete coaching, I think.
Is that something that you had to learn in order for you to help teach the people who come into your clinic and work for you? I know you want to unload on what you know to the people who work for you and give them all your information, but I guess was it a struggle early on to like start to give people who work for you information, or did you give them into like little nudges, like maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that? Did you give them free reign to make mistakes and go forward? I guess, how did you handle taking the information you know and trying to enact it or give it to people who work for you?
Well, in the early days of my having a studio, I had renters. Some businesses may term them independent contractors, but there were just professionals renting space out of my studio. And when my schedule became too full, I would give them some of the clients that were coming in to see me. And ironically enough, they would develop big enough business, and then they would launch their own studio down the road a bit. And so we were the I guess the springboard or the platform for which many studios in this area have been opened, and which is wonderful. It's an incredible gift and honor to be, I guess, the grandfather now, or I would like to say father, but who knows, the grandfather of all of these other places, because we can't help everyone that lives in this community, but having a whole bunch of studios to do that could. So to answer your question, the information, although I've paid for my education many times over, it's freely gotten and freely given. And there's no way that you can replicate yourself because of who you are and the patients that you work with and the success that you are. There's no way to put you into a Xerox machine or some cloning device. So you can give away all the information, but you can't give away yourself. And I think that's one of the key components that allowed me to relinquish and to freely give the information that I acquire. And selfishly enough, when we teach others, we learn more. So not just the information that I'm teaching my staff, it embeds itself deeper into me, or it makes me question the things that I'm teaching, and I have to go back and learn or question what I have learned. It's a wonderful, it's just a wonderful kind of cycle that the teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher. So we do weekly mentoring with my staff here, and we pay them. They're on the time clock. So I'm actually paying people to learn what I know, which I don't. I think a business coach would say you're an idiot, but there you have it.
There you have it. Yeah. And, you know, you had mentioned like people stem off from your boutique or at least, and they take what you know, and perhaps they go on to make another gym. And I'm sure it happens other places as well. But from the perspective of somebody who's looking for a place or looking for a coach or a trainer, how do you navigate it? How do you find the right one in the right studio, the right gym, the right person for you to help you achieve your fitness goals? Because it can be daunting. It's like, I don't know anything about anything in regards to exercises, and I barely know what the difference between a squat and a deadlift are. So like, how do you figure out like who's the right person for you to help?
Oh, how to choose the appropriate trainer. Well, there are certifying bodies, associations that are nationally accredited. And those organizations certify personal trainers, and they have certain baselines or fundamental foundations that they need to acquire as a trainer in order to get certified. So that's the first thing right off the top, is look for somebody that has professional credentials. But also with that comes an asterisk, because they are given just enough information to be dangerous. And that's in my opinion. They've been given just enough to be qualified to create a fairly effective and safe program. However, I would look for the trainers who are continuing to educate themselves. Which ones are constantly looking for more information? And nowadays with social media, it's easy enough to go on to posts and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok and wherever, and to find out what are they putting out there. There is something to be said about intuition also. And intuition, if you're a Malcolm Gladwell fan, the way he explains it is that the unconscious mind is always taking in information and storing it in the brain. And that unconscious mind does not communicate very well to the conscious brain in regards to words, but it can give a certain feeling or a feeling or an emotional output when you're looking at something and you can't necessarily put your finger on why that doesn't look good or why I don't have a good feeling about that. I would trust that feeling. So when you're looking around at different facilities, different studios or trainers or whomever, health professionals, and you just don't get a good feeling, trust your instinct, because it does not have the capacity to lie to you. The conscious mind, however, we're great at lying, but that deep-seated subconscious only knows what it's learned. And it's trying its best to communicate it and relay it up to the conscious brain. So my wife is phenomenal at following her instincts. And there's times where I question it, but damn it, I hate to say, she's right every stinking time.
I'm sure she'd be happy that you said that.
I'm not telling her I'm going to be on this podcast, by the way. I'm sorry. There's one less listener you're going to have.
Oh, dang it. Dang it. Well, Rocky, I do have to ask then, how are you staying on top of it? How are you continuing to educate yourself and make yourself a better person day in and day out? And then also, how are you going out and sharing the information that you know? I know you work extensively with other bodies. So I guess like, what are you doing to continue your education, to continue to be better?
Yeah, mentors need to mentor, and they need to have a mentor themselves. So over the years, I have had several mentors. Currently, there's two fellows, Chris and Gary Ward, out of London, England. And they are my mentors currently with a company called Anatomy in Motion. Been studying with them since 2014. And now I have become one mentor for their company with a handful of others worldwide, and offering educational courses and workshops through them, but also my own work to trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, athletic trainers, and the like. And so that's how I continue to teach others, but I need to learn. There's also motor neurology with a company called Z Health, Dr. Eric Cobb. I've been studying with that company for several years now, which is all about brain science. And the more I learn, the more I realize the little I know. And those are the type of things. For my own spiritual and mental pursuit, I love puzzles and I love surfing. I love anything that you can stand on a board and try and balance and ride. So whether it's skate, surf, snow, wake, whatever it is. Here in Santa Cruz, it's much easier to just walk down to the ocean and get on a board. And that's a passion of connecting with nature. And it's something that I've been raised with in the woods of New England, growing up there. And every month I would go camping. And it took me to Yellowstone National Park after college, and eventually on to the Santa Cruz Mountains here on the Central Coast. And there's something about living among the giant redwoods of the coastal redwoods of the Central Coast and being right on the water. It's a very healing environment. So I do have a little meditation practice. And sometimes it's in my car before I pull out of the driveway. If I can just close my eyes without anything going on in the car warming up and just breathe 10 times without thinking of anything, that's great. And sometimes it turns into longer, but those are the things that keep me going. I've got a wonderful wife and 2 amazing kids, and I get to experience life with them. And yeah, that's it. Just sharing what you know and passing it on.
Well, Rocky, I really appreciate you sharing all that and really being a guest on my podcast today and sharing everything that you know. I think a lot of people are going to be able to benefit so much from our conversation today. We're going to close out on the final remarks, in which I do ask everybody these questions. You didn't have the opportunity to look at them like I give everybody else, but I think you're going to handle these questions well. So,
Hot seat. All
yes.
Right, here we go.
So this is going to be the health me to health you portion of the podcast. And the first question is, if you had the attention of everyone in the world for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Go take a walk. That's what I would say. It would be short and simple. We were meant to move. The body functions better when we stay in motion and resting occasionally. And the one thing that we can all do for 2 million years, we've perfected it, is walking. Everything gets restored when you go for a walk.
This next question is a 2-part question. Are you glad that you're a Patriots fan? And do you think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Wow, you ask that to every guest? That is awesome.
No, I don't. I picked it specifically for you because I know you're a Patriots fan and I'm a Giants fan. So I figured I'd poke fun at this one.
I see how this is. Well, off on my left shoulder behind me just happens to be 3 Super Bowl footballs back there from 3 out of the, how many? Oh, 6. 3 out of the 6 Super Bowls.
I think you're missing 2 though, or something
that they've
like that.
won. Yeah, somewhere. I don't see them in your background, but I'm sure they're lurking in a closet somewhere. Yes, I am a diehard Patriots fan. I still love Tom Brady and Gronk. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are my NFC team, but my home is in New England, and I love the Patriots, and they have every chance to go to the Super Bowl and win, just like any of the other teams that are in the playoffs. So yeah, go Pats.
Yeah, they're looking pretty good. I do have to admit, better than my Giants this year. And preparing for this podcast, I listened to another one of yours, and you're also a Tottenham fan, and I'm a Manchester City fan. So at least we can be kind of friendly there, at least, and not be not too harsh on that.
No, go Hotspurs, definitely.
Last question. Where can people learn more about you and find you if they like what we heard today and want to learn more about you, maybe get your book? I guess, where can people find you?
There's a couple of websites, rfcsantacruz.com. RFC refers to Rehab Fitness Conditioning. That's our studio in Santa Cruz. So rfcsantacruz.com. And also, simply enough, rockysnyder.com. ROCKYSNYDER. RockySnyder.com. You can find me on Instagram under the same name. I've got a YouTube channel by the same name as well. Just connect with me on Facebook. And the 2 podcasts, of course, I've got the Rock Fit Files and Zealous podcast. So for those pro sports fans, like your Giants, I interview athletic trainers, physical therapists, strength coaches in the world of professional sports. And I had Steve Kennelly, who's the assistant athletic trainer of the New York Giants, on not too long ago. Good guy, good friend. And we just talk about all things strength conditioning.
Love it. Well, and again, everything will be in the show notes. So everything he did today, if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you can probably look in the show notes and all the links will be there. But Rocky, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Appreciate it.
It has honestly been a blast. I can't wait for it to come out. And remember, I'm not telling my wife.
We'll make sure it doesn't get to her.